But why you just sitting there? He ain't doing nothing now. Put him in the car.
How long y'all gotta hold him down?
This is why you don't do drugs, kids.
It ain't about drugs, bro. Y'all understand
Yeah,
that?
y'all don't gotta put y'all right.
He is human, bro.
His nose is
But I'm saying you
bleeding.
can put him in the car. That's some
We
bum
tried
ass
that
shit.
for 10 minutes.
That's some bum ass shit, bro. That's some bum ass shit, bro. Y'all know that. You don't gotta sit there with your knee on his neck, bro.
He's talking, he's fine.
Bro, he ain't crying, bro.
Alright, we're done.
You circle like in a jiu-jitsu move, bro. You trapped in his breathing right there.
Remember the name Darnella Frazier. If not for her, you would have probably never heard the name George Floyd, or the perpetrator's name, Derek Chauvin. There were other cameras that recorded parts of what was unfolding that day in Minneapolis. But the video the 17-year-old Frazier shot on her phone, the angle she captured, is the one you know best, the one that shocked you. It was one act of citizen journalism, and the country is now dealing with the consequences.
First of all, let us be clear. If we had not seen this, then we wouldn't be talking about it. There wouldn't have been any protests. So I think it was purely about what we saw. The video evidence was so shocking. And the woman who took it was very brave to do that.
It is notable that someone outside of the vision of Trump's America was the person to bring to light what Trump's America looks like for the rest of us. We see the power of citizen media in this moment, where a Black teenage girl, by virtue of taking a cell phone video, was the person that helped open up mainstream media's lens about the effect that the president is having on the country.
America was soon swept with protests, flooded with imagery. Demonstrators in city after city fighting with men in uniform, police cars and stations torched, dozens of journalists assaulted and arrested by police. Then came the curfew orders, the mobilizing of the National Guard, and the protesters gathered at the gates of the White House, where Donald Trump was in the basement bunker, laying low. Not a good look for a would-be strongman.
Guys, move!
Let's go.
So the next day, the White House countered with some imagery of its own, through a photo opportunity designed to deliver a message to Trump's political base, evangelical American Christians.
Is that your Bible?
State Bible.
He had to make some sort of statement. So he ordered the police around the White House to use tear gas to clear a path. He walked to an Episcopal church, and then Trump stood outside and held a Bible in the air. A book he's never read. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the top military officer in the United States, accompanied the president on that walk. He wore his battle uniform, his battle fatigues in camouflage. The fact that he chose to wear what he would wear to battle while he walked through the streets of Washington, D.C., is one of the more frightening things I have ever seen in my country. It was a clear signal to his most steadfast supporters that he is willing to go to any length to support his stay in power.
So he created this moment strictly for a photo opportunity. And the most disturbing part about that was he got it.
President Trump.
Because what people will see, particularly people who only focus on one part of the echo chamber, that in this country is Fox News, for that crowd, it will look like a win for Trump. It really represented a middle finger to Americans who stood in solidarity with the Black people of this country who have been so abused and oppressed. And I think his message resonated with his base.
Donald Trump gets to his base through different information pipelines. On the broadcast side, he relies on Fox News, and despite some periodic criticism there, such as what he heard this week for not cracking down harder on protesters,
What about the president? Where was he during all of this?
Fox still stands by Trump. Twitter is the president's social media platform of choice, followed by Facebook. For years, their respective CEOs, Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, have been pressured to block Trump's output over inaccuracies and worse. On May 29th, when Trump tweeted about thugs on the streets, saying that when the looting starts, the shooting starts, Twitter intervened in a way it never has before, slapping a warning label on the tweet saying that the President of the United States was glorifying violence.
In this case, it wasn't that Twitter thought, whoa, this is going too far. It was the outrage from other Twitter users saying, look, you have the leader of the United States inciting violence here. Some people get blocked or banned from Twitter for much less than that. And really what Twitter did, they still fell a little short because quite honestly, that's a tweet that should have got him banned.
Facebook, on the other hand, has simply chosen to ignore its own rules and pander to the president. Mark Zuckerberg was quoted in the New York Times saying that he distinguishes what Trump did from a call for violence because Trump was calling for state violence, which Zuckerberg now says is allowed. Well, this is going to be a shock to the head of the military junta in Myanmar, who had his Facebook account blocked when he called for state violence against the Rohingya minority. So Facebook is once again deciding to hold Trump to a different standard than even other world leaders who are engaged in authoritarian violence.
This is the news story where Donald Trump's attacks on American journalists, all that enemies of the people talk, came home to roost.
I am pressed.
I don't care. Get down.
Okay, I'm down.
Apparently, carrying press credentials or having a camera rolling is no longer enough to shield American reporters and crews from overzealous cops.
Who are they aiming that at?
Nice shooting at the photographer.
Like directly at us.
Good evening. We are witnessing a failure of presidential leadership at a time.
CNN and MSNBC brand themselves as the fact-checking, truth-telling, tough-on-Trump news channels the country needs right now.
He calls them thugs? Who is the thug here?
The part they leave out is the central role they played in helping him get to the White House. In the early stages of the 2016 campaign, those networks couldn't get enough of candidate Trump, the conflict he sowed and the ratings he delivered. And even after he took office, and those networks grew more and more critical of the president, they remained commercially addicted to the Trump story.
James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press.
May 12th, 2017 is a case in point. Trump was tweeting that day about his nemesis at the FBI, James Comey. The networks were typically transfixed, while another story, a significant one for African Americans, was getting short shrift.
They were in a tizzy over this piece of information. Well, I suppose that's interesting, but that very same day, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced to the local prosecutors and attorneys across the country to start pursuing maximum sentences against people. Just like that, he brought back mandatory minimums. Mandatory minimums in America have a disproportionate adverse impact on communities of color, specifically Black people. So this is something that impacts the rising majority of this country, but instead the media chose to focus on Donald Trump's tweet. And that's just a microcosm for how the media often misses the mark.
What I think the media should do is, first of all, figure out why these people in the governor's offices and the like, and the presidents of the United States, even before Trump, why they have not carried out these reforms, and why do we keep having the same thing happen over and over and over. And they might ask public officials, what do you intend to do about all of these underlying causes and tensions that are in the society now, and about police reform? What are you guys going to do? Ask them that.
We've seen that the Trump presidency has essentially gamified corporate media, its structures, its norms, and its values. One of the core values of corporate media is to report on conflict. And this is a president who thrives on creating conflict and does that very well. And so corporate media follows suit by pursuing headlines and turning the camera towards this person instead of actually framing the news for the American people. Those old habits are very, very hard to abandon, but that is the challenge for corporate media today.